Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live. I'm excited to have the opportunity to interview a special guest today. Her name is Shelly, and she's a best-selling author. And so we are going to walk through her life a little bit and the reason why she's written her book and some other information. So I see she's already chimed on. I waved at her. She's looking to join. As soon as she joins, we'll go ahead and get started. Hope everybody's doing well this day. It is and so anyway, Shelly has just asked to join. So we're going to go ahead and get started right off the bat. Hey, Shelly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. My dog's acting a little bit crazy, so I might have.
That's okay. What kind of dog?
He is an Australian Shepherd Poodle mix, an Aussie Doodle.
Wow.
Say hi.
Yeah. I love dogs.
Yeah.
I have trouble trusting anybody that doesn't like dogs.
No.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to hop on here with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Okay, you can get down, buddy. Okay, cool.
So, hey, I do a brief introduction of themselves. So, wouldn't mind for us now and those that will be joining us on the replay, would you just introduce yourself a little bit?
Absolutely. So, as you said, my name is Shelly. I am an author. I published my first novel at the age of, I'm trying to remember, 42 probably. And I just decided that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And so I have pursued that ever since. I've released a complete trilogy and a children's book, and I have an upcoming journal this year that's on my list. Yeah, so it should be released by this summer. I coach people with, their writing journey, their self-publishing journey, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just, that's what I do and who I am.
Well, awesome. Wow, you've been busy.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Good morning, Goddess. It's good to see you too.
Good morning. Hi. Oh.
Okay. So, now you're publishing a lot, right? So, but when you and I talked, we talked about your history.
Yes.
Right. What kind of led to you writing, even? Give us a little bit of a background on your religious background.
Yes, sure, absolutely. So, I grew up in what I call a cult. I know that that's a loaded word these days. If you haven't read the book Cultish by Amanda Montell, I highly recommend it. It talks about the etymology of the word and how it has morphed and evolved into what we use today. My dog, give me 1 second. I'm letting him out.
The dog cannot be contained.
He is just, I closed the office door, and so he just gets crazy when I do that. So anyway, yes, so I use it because I kind of follow the BITE model from Steve Hassan, BITE, behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. And so it was a high demand control group that was, under a religious umbrella. So yeah, that's kind of my story from growing up.
Okay, awesome. So if I'm correct, you kind of describe yourself as a cult survivor. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
So let me ask you this. Being raised in a cult, when did you start to deconstruct or notice that it wasn't for you?
I think it's a complicated, thing for me because I was born there and raised in it, and it wasn't as, I think, extreme when I was young, but I watched it become more and more progressively extreme. And so I basically lived a double life. I had the life of my imagination, which served me well. I turned them into characters in novels. And I get to play with my imaginary friends still. But that was really the way that I coped. And so I didn't quite know for a very long time what was my own belief and what was my escape from everything.
Right.
So I think it started early, but really when kind of my feet were held to the fire was when I moved overseas as a young adult and I began to view different types of people, different types of Christianity, even different types of religion, people that didn't have religion. And so for the first time in my life, I was kind of outside of this bubble that I was in that I thought was the whole world, like other than, you know, the people who were going to hell. You know what I mean? Like it was just like we had all the answers and we knew what was right. And when I started to pick apart the things that I had to hold for myself, that was when I was probably 25 when I moved overseas, 24. And I think that I started probably within the first few years. So right at 30, I would say, right before 30. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that makes sense because living in America, you think the whole world's like us, right?
Yeah.
Going overseas and escaping that bubble gives you a new perspective, new thoughts, everything. I imagine. I hear it happening time and time again to people I know. It's like, yeah, we're very much different from the rest of the world, you know, when it comes to religion and whatnot.
Yes.
With that, so did you grow up in a religious family? Are they still religious?
Yeah, so my father is deceased. My mother is still living, and she attends the church that I got married in, actually. So yeah, they're still very much entwined with it. And I had to have a conversation with my mom, you know, before I started like writing blog posts or speaking publicly that, you know, like, hey, this is my definition and this is why. But I don't hold that against her. And thank you for your thoughts about my father. He was just a lovely man. And I get my writing chops from him. I'm sure I hope to be a writer like him someday because he was amazing. But yeah, the reason I like to speak out about it is because of the system. I am not okay with the system. And so I'm not like I don't have vendetta against the people or, you know, try to disparage anybody. I mean, the people who need to be held accountable, I want to hold them accountable. Hey, yeah. Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Because I'm not afraid to do that, but I hope that the message I convey is always about we are questioning ideologies and policies, and we're not attacking people.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's where healing comes in, right? I mean, that's a process. Healing's a process. And people stay in their angry stage a long time, and that's fine. You know, everybody
I still get angry about things.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Well, right. But the process of when you can get to the point eventually, in my opinion, we can get to the point eventually to where it's not so much, you know, violent anger towards some or that disgruntlement. It's more of like, hey, this system is broken. You're not attacking any one person. You're attacking the system. With that, so was your mom okay with your transition and your change from religion?
I mean, we had to have a lot of discussions, and I'm sure that we'll, you know, have ongoing discussions. I think she's actually on here. I saw her pop on. But yeah, I think that just so in my journey, I have found that being truthful and preemptive, like I didn't want to like just have a blog post that my mom subscribes to my list, you know, my email list, and like have her blindsided by this, like, hey, I'm talking about cults, you know, just to be able to say, hey, I want to talk to you about this and this is how I feel, and have her tell me how she feels. She doesn't agree. Like it was, you know, there were some hard conversations, and I sent her some YouTube videos and some blog posts of other people who were, you know, related to the leaders and that kind of thing. And like the leader who took over after the guy that I grew up under, and then I, you know, was influenced by the leader who eventually went to prison is in prison. So, you know, these things are documented, and that's just how I see it. And dealing with things in a truthful manner has been a huge part of my healing, because I was self-sabotaging when I was hiding or dishonest.
Right. Right.
Just shh.
And did you ever question what you were religiously taught prior to going overseas?
Could you say that again?
Goddess has a question. She says, did you ever question, sorry, what you were religiously taught prior to going overseas?
Yes. So, like I said, if you didn't catch it at the beginning, I really lived a life in my head a lot. And so I held things separately. My questions were always in my make-believe world. Okay, I'll give you an example. When I first, oh, here he comes. When I first published my novel, I was really scared almost because I have some mysticism in it and it's not about God. And I thought, the people who didn't know about me being like completely removed from the cult are gonna know now, because I'm publishing these words. And even though it's fiction, there was that angst inside of me, like, oh, I'm revealing the truer parts of myself, and that is scary.
Yeah, yeah, I imagine so. Hello, empath. Good to see you as
Uh,
well. Okay, so your family and did you have how'd your friends react to your change?
I mean, honestly, I was overseas when the biggest transformation, metamorphosis kind of came. And so I think that, Facebook kept us connected. Facebook wasn't even a thing when I first moved overseas, but yeah, I just, I had new friends and a different life. And I would, kind of choose as I went, and try to be strategic and honest with the friends that I did have. And not that I always did it the right way, but every experience was a learning one for sure.
Well, I mean, anytime you're deconstructing, it is, right? It's
Right.
going to work or not.
Right. Right.
Um, so what, if I can ask this, and you're welcome to pass on this because not everybody answers the question. What do you believe spiritually right now? Like, where are you at now?
Oh gosh, that is complicated. There's an old hymn, and for those of you who feel triggered, this is your warning. Because for me, for a very long time, I was actually part of the cults singing groups and recruiting and all that. So I understand triggers, and music was huge. Hymns were off limits for me, that kind of thing. But I am at the point in my life now to where there's this old hymn. I think it's called The Love of God. And there's a verse in it that says, could we with ink the ocean fill, or were the skies of parchment made? Were every stalk on earth a quill, and were the skies of parchment made? To write the love of God above would drain the oceans dry, nor could the scroll contain the whole, though stretched from sky to sky. I feel like right now, spiritually, I am learning about that being, whatever it is,
Divine,
whoever it is, the divine, the entire universe, God himself, herself.
right?
um, all of that is what I'm exploring. And yeah, and it feels pretty good. I think that, I'm at the point where I feel almost grateful that I was introduced to concepts like that. Like, to write the love of God would drain the ocean dry. But I was never introduced to that God in the church I was in, ever. We talked about it, but it was not embodied. It wasn't real. And so at this point in my life, I feel like I'm open and I am inviting that presence in my life.
That's interesting because I would also, when you talk about not being contained within the scrolls or anything like that, whenever I look in the Old Testament, let's say, trigger warning for anybody that has struggles with the Bible, um, the Jewish people described God as a rock an ever-flowing stream. They didn't exactly know how to nail down what the divine was. They just knew it was bigger than what they could describe, right? In
Yeah.
a lot of ways. And so I totally understand where you're coming from, that there is so much more to the divine or spirituality than we can ever comprehend. Okay, we're getting some comments coming in. It says, empath, I said, learning God for yourself versus a version of God presented to you. That's very good. I like that.
Yeah.
Becca, the vastness of who God might be, not who we are told God was.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, so you're overseas. You're mulling through all this. You're deconstructing. You're making new friends.
Yeah.
Which is one of the most difficult people that are difficult things that people that are deconstructing have to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they're around their usual friends. Um, um, what, like when you came back to the States, when did you start or decide, hey, I'm going to write about these experiences?
Oh, wow. That wasn't for a while, I think. I started maybe like blogging or, using social media to raise awareness and be involved in that kind of thing. Fairly recently, it's been in the last 2, maybe 3 years. Um, I attended a workshop once after I think I had just finished my third novel. I hadn't released it yet. And I knew that something was next, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Um, and it was, I have to write a memoir. And so that's a scary thing. And it's still in progress. And it's been 2.5 years, 3 years maybe in January. Yeah, it's been 3 years in January since I started the process and went to that writing group. And my mentor and writing coach, he invited me like, hey, come to this thing. You'll really benefit from it. And when I went, I'm like in this room of high level entrepreneurs, like people who I'm just like, what am I doing here? Um, and they, are all writing their next book and this and that. And I'm like, so I was born in a cult. And like, it was day two. It was day two. Like it was like a 3 or 4 day workshop. And there were 14 of us and the mentor. And I hadn't gone on, and it was day two, the last person to go. So my mentor looks at me, he's like, Shelly, you haven't said anything. I'm like, dang it. And I was like, yeah. And I told them. And it was almost magical, honestly, because as I released that truth into the air and it landed on the ears and the laps of these people who were, all thinking about their next project, it was almost as if there was silence and everyone leaned in and they were like, that's beautiful. And wanted to know more. And a guy in the room who's like, I think what he does for a living, he works with TED for TED Talks. Anyway, he comes up to me and he's like, I was born in a cult. And I was like, what? And he starts sharing a story that he's never told anyone in his adulthood.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, so this is what's weighing on my heart. And I wasn't even at the point in my life where I was being honest and truthful about all of the feelings I was having, right? And so it was kind of like sign after sign, moment after moment. I knew that this is what I need to do. And these stories are important because people are being hurt and damaged. And if we don't teach about like the ear markers of people taking away your control, then it's just going to perpetuate. And that's the hardest thing for me, honestly, is that I mentioned earlier that the guy who took over after our leader passed away, he went to prison. And so it's like, everybody's like, oh, he was a bad apple. Even though he was like venerated when I was younger. Like I have a quote of him in my senior portrait.
Oh,
Like, and these excuses almost of like, oh, he was the bad apple. And I see still this trend of abuse, neglect, cover up, so many things that you're like, it still goes on. So we have to do something. I can't stop anyone from making a different choice, but at least I can tell the stories that show the hurt that follows some of these choices.
so you're in this. You're planning to write.
Yeah.
I would think that writing is kind of what is healing to you as well, is a kind of therapy as well. I would think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Was there one specific thing that you really had to overcome that really played with your heart and your mind?
What do you mean by played with my heart?
Well, I mean, coming out of a cult, like was there a certain teaching you had to overcome? Like some people had purity culture, issue.
Yeah.
Was there anything specific for you?
Oh my gosh. For me, it was just block after block, like, but I think maybe the biggest one is that I could be loving toward myself. I didn't have to view myself as 100% fundamentally flawed and as filthy rags.
Oh, yeah.
There's a term for it and I can't remember it right now, but it's kind of like when you are obsessive about these, thoughts or ideologies that are taught to you, and over and over again, you repeat those. So that is definitely something that I did in my mind of self-hatred, from things like these teachings of, your righteousness is as filthy rags. There's nothing good in you. And so that I really took to heart, and understanding that I could actually love myself the way I was made, the way I was born, was life altering.
Being able to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Thoughts, your own emotions, because you're right. We're taught not to, right? I mean, we're taught to believe what our feelings are telling us. And we're taught not to trust our thoughts because they are not pure. And there's nothing good we can do unless Jesus lives in us or somebody else lives, the divine lives in us that works through us, right? So there's all that. We had a question, Empath, says, what's your definition of a culture?
Yeah. So I think that, like I said, there is a book called Cultish by Amanda Montell, and she talks about the word cult, the word culture, how they're from the same root word. And culture to me is just a group that holds the same like practices or circles or traditions, not necessarily all the same beliefs, because we can live in an American culture where the belief system is diverse. But yeah, to me, that's basically a culture. I try to create a culture or an environment of truth, liberation, that kind of thing. That's how I would describe a culture. Maybe it's a shared language. A lot of times that's a culture, which we see often in cults, right? You have these terms that mean nothing to the outside world.
Right.
She meant cult. Okay. Okay. Well, Steve Hassan he calls himself the cult expert. And so that's basically what I use to go by his model. It's BITE, BITE, behavior, information, thought, and emotional control. Those are the ear markers. I think you can find his stuff on freedomofmind.com. So feel free to look him up. He's got a great set of free resources. Janja Lalich is also a cult expert, and she talks about bounded choice. And that really resonates deeply with me, because a lot of times, even in any evangelical church, you'll find people, saying, oh, like, well, you can choose this and you can do that. And if you feel like you are bound to being approved of or accepted, if you go outside of the choices that are approved by this group, then yeah, it could be a cult. So could be, if it looks like a cult.
So you pressed on and you wrote your first book, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So it's called Tracing Time. It is a time travel love story. My dad passed away suddenly when I was 36 years old, I believe. And it was just devastating to me, and just shocking. And like I said, he was a beautiful writer. Back when the internet was like, portrayed on movies as a place where people just like stalked children. Like it was late 90s. It was literally the late 90s. He got on these forums where he was a poet, and he was voted best poet of the year twice in a row. And so he got a book deal, and so he's a fabulous writer, and I really knew no other way to emote without telling a story. And so I just began to tell this story. Like I said, it's a time travel love story. Starts out where, the protagonist, Anna, is in a depression, which, I was writing during the processing of my grief for my dad's death. And then they just kind of go on this journey. She becomes a heroine of all things wonderful. And then I went on to write the sequel, and then I finished up the trilogy in 2019, I believe. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Awesome. So a lot of people in the deconstruction community are still in the process of healing.
Yeah.
And everybody heals differently. What did you do that was significant in helping your healing?
Oh gosh. I think that, well, first of all, it really helped me to get help. I have a therapist, and that has been invaluable. I have
Same here.
Yeah.
It isn't. Yeah.
Yes. And I have practices that I do. A lot of times I was never great at it, but how, well, at least in my cult denomination, whatever you want to call it, they were very, very strict on morning routines, prayer time, etc. Like I would have to fill out reports at one point in my life if I did or did not do that. I also actually worked at a place where I had to fill out a weekly thing if I was, having these. So anyway, I think redeeming that space for myself has been invaluable. Like I start my morning and I journal and I read, and I just have some space for thought and reflection, and meditation, prayer. I think that all of that, reclaiming it and doing it the way that I see fit, has been really healing for me. Yeah. And I view deconstruction as this like set of Legos, if you will. And I did not put myself together when I was a child. Things were kind of built for me.
Right.
I think we're all that way. And as I pulled them apart, I have this, mess scattered all over the floor, but I get to put it back in any configuration I want. And so that mindset shift for me really was key. That I knew in essence those blocks, like I was the same. My essence was still there. My moral compass the way I thought, the way I acted, the kindness I found in my own heart towards people, like that didn't change. I, sure, I went through dark times and mood swings and all kinds of other stuff, but the essence of who I was, I actually knew and carried with me all along. And so those built back together will look different, but I got to do it myself. I get to do it myself.
Mm-hmm. I may steal that if that's okay.
Of course. Yes.
That's a great analogy. I love it. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's actually beautiful. So, okay. So, that's your person. Let me ask you this, and this, you don't have to explain this if you don't want to, but you hit on that. One of your things is you start the day with prayer. Knowing how the divine or the universe or whatever looks like for you now, how does that work? Because a lot of people, obviously they're going through deconstruction, are challenged by how to even begin to pray again, and how that looks. How does that look for you?
So I never hold myself to it. That's first. There is no obligation. Like I said, I have some rituals and routines that I like to do. Like I'm never going to not start my day with coffee unless the doctor tells me I can't. But like other things I'm very fluid on. And to me, it really just looks like quiet. It doesn't, I don't even, I'm trying to remember if I like actually say stuff. Sometimes I do, rarely. But I'll go outside I did it this morning and it's raining. It's been like off and on raining all day, but I have no shoes on, and I'll do it in the winter with the snow on the ground. Sometimes I just take my shoes off and feel the ground and just be grateful. It most of the time looks like gratitude for me. Just thank you. Thank you for this experience. Thank you for my family. Thank you for my home. Thank you for my dog. Thank you for, just anything I see, feel, and taste that day. I want to be grateful for and not feel like I'm so unworthy not to deserve it. I kind of reclaim it as, well, this is the right that we all have to be here, to this gift we've been given of life. And I'm just going to be grateful. I'll start that out most of the days I have. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you have multiple books. Tell us about some of your other writing or your future planned writings.
Okay, sure. Like I said, my first book was a time travel love story. It starts with a woman whose husband unexpectedly disappears / dies, is what they believe. She goes off in a quest to find him. He is in another time period, and so she travels through time. Book 2 starts again with her story where they kind of left off, but eventually goes into their children have grown up in a different time period, and so they converge, they meet along the time continuum. And then her daughter kind of becomes the heroine of that story. And then the third book finishes it up with the granddaughter as a young woman, and she, takes on this quest to save the planet from ultimate destruction, from global warming, that kind of thing. Yeah, so those are the 3. And then I have a children's book. It's called The Hug Who Had No Arms. And I wrote it during the pandemic. It was probably April, May, of 2020. And it just came out, and I published it pretty quickly. From the time I started writing it to the time I drew it,
So you
formatted it. Yeah, I did.
Are you just as well?
I mean, I play with it. I love it. Any type of art I'll play with. I love it.
All right.
So, yeah, and it was just a really short time period because I wanted to get a message out about, showing love in any way, any capacity we can. I think it's a timely story for any period, but especially when we were going through social distancing. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what that one is about. Later this year, probably in May, I will release a journal. I did a creative mindfulness challenge, I think here on Instagram. I think I probably did it both on Instagram and Facebook, but and that was in 2020 as well. And I had some participants, some great feedback. I turned it into a little like PDF for my website, but I've had a lot of creative ideas and moments, and like how do I, a lot of speaking gigs with like, tell me more about your creative process. What does creativity mean? Anyway, so I'm turning it into a journal, and I'm uploading a free course that will be a companion to it on my website, to really just kind of like hone your creativity and use 15 minutes a day. That's all it takes to, that's part of my practice, is that I will sit and I will write for 15 minutes a day and get that creative juice flowing. So that will be released later this year. And then I sent my book proposal off to some agents with some queries about the memoir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I haven't decided. If I don't hear back, I have a manager in Hollywood that is helping us. I'm writing a screenplay with my brother. He's an actor.
Okay.
And so we are writing a fictionalized version of our story with the cult. And that just allows us to integrate any character we want with the stories that we've kind of collected throughout the years. And you won't know when our story begins and when it ends, which is nice. And and then, you know, it just protects a lot of people. But it will be the story of the cult that we grew up in. And the main family is, yeah, highlighted. And people who are, you know, kind of in the orbit of that group, IFB, they will know who it is, who's who. But that's another project. So the managers I have are helping me with that project, with my memoir, but I might self-publish again. I've done self-publishing this whole time. And, you know, with the I Got Out organization that specifically works with survivors of cults, I have a lot of backing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that one.
Going to be a best-selling author.
Much more to come.
That's awesome. So, let me ask you for some advice here.
I'm not good at advice, but sure.
What advice would you give someone who is starting or thinking about deconstructing, getting out of a cult? What would you tell them to do?
Oh, wow.
Kind of a loaded.
Yeah.
But,
It's
yeah.
You know, it's so common, I think, for us who have been told how to believe and what to think and what to do, to always look for someone else to have the answer. So the best thing that I could tell somebody is to sit with yourself and develop a trust that you can tap into that knowing again.
Right.
I think that would be number one for me, because it took me a long time to get there, and that once I did, that was a turning point for me. And then really finding a person you trust and being honest. In my life, it unraveled as, oh, I can be honest here. I can be honest here. I can be honest here. And the more I was able to be honest, the more I became an honest person. And it was really hard, so hard for me to be like, I was a liar all the time, every day, because I would hide everything.
Yeah.
That's how I was raised. You can't do this, or you're not accepted. And so you hide that. Like, by the time I was 18 and I was, you know, off in college, I had to fill out reports that I had spent time in the Word and, you know, talk to at least, I forget how many, what the minimum was, people per week, and gone through the plan of salvation. Ask me if I did that all the time. No. How is it humanly possible to keep tabs on yourself that way?
Right.
So, you know, you realize that, like, I'm just lying to myself and others, and that is hard. That's hard to come to terms with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's That's a good word. If you want to be something the church would say, that's a good word, right? So, um, okay, so what's the best way to find and follow you and your future endeavors? How can people, follow your story?
Yeah, so I mean, you can follow me here on Instagram. I pretty much, I mean, I'm not as consistent as I would like to be, but I try. And I'm active. You can, DM me and find out. And I also have a little link in my bio that will take you to my website. So I do have a newsletter, and that will definitely keep you up to date. Again, like I don't send out a lot of emails. I probably do maybe 8 to 12 a year. So if I get one in a month, I'm doing good.
Doing good.
Yeah, yeah. But I appreciate so much. I appreciate my readers and the people who enjoy my work. But I am the type of person who I don't like a lot of emails, and so I'm just not going to be that person who floods your inbox. So if you like a lot of contact and information all the time, it's probably not for you. I'm not. My work's probably not for you. But
are your books on your website, or how do they? Okay.
Yeah. You can get books on the website. Like I said, I'm going to release a free companion course with my journal this year, so you can get that on there. Just sign up. And then I do, I have other things, but yeah, follow me on my newsletter. Probably the best. So thanks. Oh, thank you, Dylan.
Yes. Okay. So, for all those that are watching now, or all those that will be watching, I've gotten to know Shelly a little bit of her story. She's outstanding. And so if you want to pick up one of her books, let me encourage you, please go to her website, get her books, follow her IG page, and really kind of hear her story. I think it's very freeing. I think there's a lot of wisdom in there too, as you've heard her talk about, how to recognize a cult, amongst other things. And Shelly, I thank you for sharing your story and taking the time to talk with us. I've learned I've stolen some things from you, so it's great.
You don't have to steal; they're free.
I really do appreciate you and the work that you're doing to help other people.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way about you. I follow your page. I have for a while, and I'm just so grateful that there are people like you who are really helping others through this period. It can be devastating. I didn't mention this earlier, but you asked me if there's that like one thing that, like, I don't think it was one thing, but there was one time like I had a mental breakdown. Like I didn't get out of bed for weeks.
Yeah.
And so this takes its toll. And if you don't get the help that you need, it's so hard. And sometimes it's devastating. It's deadly. I mean, I know there were times in my life where I didn't have any suicide attempts, but I had these, suicidal ideation, like I would be better off if. And so the work that you're doing, coaching people through this, I mean, thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And I love showcasing other people that are doing work as well. It's going to take all of us for people to heal and hopefully not to have this happen again, at least. So thank you, Shelly.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone that stuck with us throughout this time, and those that will watch. Once again, if you have any questions for Shelly, she said her DMs are there, and she responds quickly. So just know that she'll get back to you. So with that being said, Shelly, look forward to reading your books, and can't wait to see what else you're going to be doing in the future.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day, everybody. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.